Yeah, we're like one public hearing ahead of us. Hey, you know what? It'll be what it'll be.
Yeah.
Yep. See you, Mike. What's happening, Joe Taylor? How you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. Or we'll see.
Sorry to wait downstairs for you guys.
It's now 6:30. I'd like to call to order the Regional Planning Commission public hearing for March the 3rd. As I said, at 6:30, and I apologize tonight. I've had laryngitis and all, and I hope my voice still goes. Of course, my wife said I've been the perfect husband here lately with the laryngitis, so I think you all can realize that. Now, we always start off customarily. I'll ask Mr. Servon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask that if you have a cell phone or any kind of electronic device, that you either turn it off or you put it on vibrate so it won't disrupt our meeting as we get into it. Sarah, I'll now turn it over to you for roll call and determination of quorum.
Mr. Peterman?
Here.
Mr. Servon?
Here.
Mrs. Karcher?
Here.
Mr. Galvry?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here, nice to see all the commissioners present again.
Mr. Jester?
Here, and once again, I relay that same message. It's good to be back after 2 years of separation, most of us here.
So you have 7 present, you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. You have in front of you the agenda for tonight with how we're going to go by things. If there's no additions or corrections to the agenda, I would ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Sarah, call the commission.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Servon?
Yes.
Mrs. Karcher?
Yes.
Mr. Galvry?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
So you have 7 yeas in favor of approving tonight's agenda.
I thank you, and I'm going to turn it right back over to you for the introduction and public hearing instructions.
Thank you. This public hearing is being conducted for the purpose of giving the citizens of the county the opportunity to present testimony on the applications before the Regional Planning Commission. Everyone will have a chance to speak. All statements are to be made from the podium in the front of the room. If you're joining online, instructions will be given during the hearing for how to join. All testimony given shall be sworn or affirmed. For the record, please give your name and address. Copies of any written statements or exhibits used during the hearing should be presented for identification and inclusion in the record. The record will remain open for 2 business days following tonight's hearing. For each application before the commission, the chairman will introduce the application. Then the applicant or representative will be given 15 minutes to present the application. Following that, those in favor of the application will be allotted 5 minutes each to speak. Then those opposed to the application will be allotted 5 minutes each to speak. When everyone has had an opportunity to give testimony, the hearing on the application will be closed. No decision will be made by the Planning Commission tonight. The Commission will hold a public business meeting next Thursday, March 10th at 6:30 p.m., at which time it will make a decision on the applications heard tonight. All information of record will be considered, and a common vote of 4 members of the Commission is required to make a decision. Anyone may attend the business meeting, but no new testimony will be received. The public notice of this hearing was published on February 11th, 2022 in the Delaware State News. And the Kent County Levy Court will hear these applications on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Unless tabled by the Planning Commission or withdrawn prior to the hearing, Levy Court also meets in this room.
I think that concludes your reading. We will now get into our public hearing. Our first application tonight in the public hearing is application CS-21-10. Application title is Our Generation, LLC. Applicants, Dan Leary, Our Generations, LLC, 87 Needs Mountain Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut, 06877. Owners, Joseph L. IV and Christina L. Taylor, 2940 Hammondtown Road, Harrington, Delaware, 19952. Engineer is Beacon Engineering, LLC, care of Robert Palmer, P.E., 23318 Cedar Lane, Georgetown, Delaware 19947. Zoning district is AR, Agriculture Residential. Comprehensive plan designation is low-density residential. Relation to the growth zone, outside. Present use, agriculture. Proposed use, solar facility, public utility. Solar array field. This project consists of a construction of fenced solar array of a 27.5 plus or minus acre parcel. Water is well. Wastewater is septic. Levy Court District is 6, Mr. Howe. Lake Forest is the school district. Fire district is Harrington, Station 52. Area and location is 27.5 plus or minus acres on the northeast corner of the intersection of Hammondtown Road, County Road 311, and Farmington Road, County Road 314, southwest of the city of Harrington. Is there someone here to represent this application? Please come to the mic, give us your name and address, and you can either be sworn or affirmed by our attorney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To echo your sentiments, the last time I was here was 2 weeks before we shut down, so it is very good to be back. For the record, my name is Robert Palmer. I'm with Beacon Engineering, representing the owner and the applicant, and my physical address is 23318 Cedar Lane, Georgetown, Delaware.
Mr. Palmer, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Try to keep the mic close to you. So we're some senior citizens
y'all
up
can
here,
hear
so we
me.
might not hear you very well.
Well, if I project rather well, so if I'm too loud, just say simmer down.
You'll do fine.
As I said, it's good to be here. Thanks for the introduction. With me this evening, I have Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, and remotely I have Mr. Leary and Mr. Schechter, so they all would like to speak at some point. The project is actually a community energy solar facility, and the proposal is for 5 megawatts. All in, it will consume roughly 18 of the 27.5 acres that the parcel would be on. So what you see on the screen there is essentially the 18 acres. Being at the corner of Hammondtown Road and Farmington Road in the northeast corner, you can see on the screen we're bisected by prong 7 of the Bright Haynes tax ditch, which is also mapped as a blue line stream. Our easterly boundary is the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Our neighbors to the north are Delmarva Power. There's a substation on the other side of those woods that we're planning to interconnect with. Other lands of the Taylors are to the south and southwest of the property. There are 3 homes west of us on Farmington Road. And the closest home would be roughly 200 feet from the proposed array. There's 70.5 acres east of us that are owned by an LLC that goes by the name or acronym of Kimba. 46 of those acres are actually zoned limited industrial. And just to kind of put this project in perspective, with it being outside of the growth zone, if you believe what Google Earth showed me through the shapes that I drew around the property, within 1,000 feet of the property there are 8 homes, one of which is owned by the Taylors. And within 2,000 feet, which is nearly 1 square mile, there are only 22 homes and 2 businesses, not including the poultry farm to the north and Delmarva Power. So we're in a pretty rural area of the county. We are in a level 3 state strategies area for spending, and the record for the zoning and whatnot has already been read, so I won't repeat that. In assembling the application, I did study the comp plan, and there were some areas in particular that I wanted to highlight in support of our application. and these all come from the land use section, chapter 7. And the comp plan's priority is to preserve areas appropriate for economic development where infrastructure is available or could be reasonably provided. And throughout the plan, areas designated for future industrial, commercial, and smaller scale neighborhood development have been designated. And in the comp plan on map 7C, while the future land use map shows this part of Mr. Taylor's farm as being low density residential, this part of the county is actually mapped for or cited for future industrial uses. And that area actually runs from the southern boundary of Mr. Taylor's farm all the way to the Harrington corporate limits. And then the east-west boundaries are Route 13 and Farmington Road. So, we're not smack dab in the middle of this future industrial area, but we're certainly a part of it. And while the comp plan talked about this area being potentially eligible for rezoning, if the criteria for a zoning amendment could be proven, that's not the subject of this application. I'm merely pointing out that, this area was contemplated for the future to potentially be eligible for industrial type uses. This project, though it will be converting farmland to a solar array, it will be preserving the natural resources on the property, which is also an important part of Chapter 7. This project indirectly will also protect the rural character of the area, because it isn't like we're going to grow homes out here. It's a solar array. And with the way these solar arrays are laid out, basically each pod, there's 26 panels in a pod, and each pod is 86 feet long. And so while it looks like we have a whole lot of space around the northerly and southerly parts of the property, or of the array, we actually are limited to that 26 or that 26 panel layout. So any areas that wouldn't be set aside for the solar arrays would likely be planted in a meadow mix, something that would promote pollinators. It would look nice within the solar array, but it would also be helpful for the area, for the agriculture in the area. The next section of my presentation, I'd like to discuss the staff recommendations that came along with the application. And there's two areas in particular. One is setbacks, and the other is in relationship to the buffers. In the setbacks section, staff recommended a 100-foot front yard setback. This property being a corner lot, the front yard would actually be Farmington Road, and the side yard would be Hamilton Road. So our neighbor to the west that's 200 feet from us would be in our front yard, and the Taylors would be in our southerly side yard. But regarding the front yard setback, what we have depicted on the plan exhibit that you have shown basically references the underlying AR1 zoning setback. Actually, we exceed for a local road, which is 40 feet. We'd proposed 50 feet simply because of the desire for site security with our fencing, as well as the buffer area that we showed on the next page, which was 2 rows of arborvitae with some dogwoods interspersed to, again, break up the sea of green and to help kind of beautify the buffer. Staff recommends a 75-foot side yard setback. And if I could talk about the northerly side yard first and then the southerly side yard, our northerly side yard setback the western half of the property is actually runs by and with the tax ditch. So we have already an 80-foot wide top of bank setback for the tax ditch right of way, which is overlaid by the 100-foot blue line stream setback. So we well exceed that 75-foot requirement. But we would request, again, because of the kind of the uniqueness of the property with the tax ditch bisecting the farm at that odd angle, it makes it difficult to hit that 26-panel layout on the north side of the ditch, which would adversely affect the community nature and the number of homes that would become subscribers to this particular array. And so we would request more along the lines of the underlying AR1 25-foot side yard on that westerly side. On the south side with Hammondtown Road, again, the Taylor's homestead is kind of centered and along this frontage. Though it's a side yard setback and was eligible for the 25-foot, at least under the original, the AR1 zoning, we actually proposed a 50-foot side yard setback, again, to make way for security fencing and buffering. For the rear yard setback, staff recommended a 75-foot rear yard, and our rear yard well exceeds that. We have, and it's rather difficult to see on the plan, but we have a Delmarva Power utility easement for the high-tension power lines that runs kind of by and with the railroad right-of-way. So the 75 feet wouldn't necessarily propose an adverse impact to the application. The other section would be the staff recommendation for buffers. And in talking with staff, we understand the importance of buffers, which is why we provided what we provided in the first place. And where we looked at the buffering was in section 18789 of the code. And what we would ask is latitude to use any and all of the 4 options. These are long, straight buffers. And if we could break those up through a combination of fencing and landscaping and berms to create character along the buffer, as opposed to, again, as I mentioned a minute ago, a sea of green with just 2 or 4 or however many rows we're required to plant. I think that would make for an overall better project. And while we only have 3 neighbors to the west, I think they would appreciate something, something attractive to look at that would potentially flower throughout the year. So in conclusion, and as I conclude, I'd like to open it up to the folks from our generation that should be on the call by now. We feel that our proposal is in harmony with Section 20551 of the conditional use requirements. We feel the location is appropriate because we're in a very low density area of the county, and our direct neighbor to the north is the very power company that we plan to partner with. So our interconnect would be very cost effective because of our proximity to that substation. And again, we're within an area that the comp plan recognizes that could be used for future industrial uses. The public health, safety, and welfare would not be adversely affected by our project, or really by any solar project for that matter, because they generate no traffic, no light pollution. They generate no dust, noise, or odors of any kind. And not only that, everything I have read, and though I'm not an expert on solar, I know how to I can grade the farm to work for stormwater. But everything I've read, solar is good for the environment, and it's a good tool for mitigating climate change, which is also a component of the comp plan. We will be providing adequate off-street parking facilities for the very few maintenance staff that would be required to manage an array of this size. And we are providing the necessary safeguards for the protection of the surrounding property owners and persons through security fencing and buffering, as we've proposed it. And the additional standards of the article, the conditional use article for public utilities and uses would also be complied with. So with that being said, if Mr. Leary and Schechter, yep, I'll stop.
I thank you for your presentation. I do have one question.
Yes,
As under staff recommendation, page 5, Kent Conservation District, I was a conservation ditch manager for over 20 years, and I see the fence actually goes around the whole parameter of the property.
yes, sir.
But somebody's going to need to be allowed to get on there to maintain and mow the ditch.
Yes,
Are there
sir.
going to be gates on those areas, or how's people going to access it?
There will be gates, and we haven't worked out those details yet, but the intent is to work with the district and NRCS to come up with a suitably sized culvert so that site security would be maintained and the tax ditch flow wouldn't be affected. And we would work with the tax ditch managers and the maintenance folks to make sure that the ditch is mowed and maintained, and that the equipment could get through there as they're working with dip outs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a very important part of the ditches so that the
Yes, sir.
can keep it mowed and all like that. One more question, and I'm going to turn it over to the other commissioners. Is this land leased or purchased by you?
It is owned by the Taylors and would remain in ownership by the Taylors. Our generation would be a leaseholder.
And it's approximately 30 years.
I'm not sure of the terms of the lease.
Okay. I will now turn it over to the commissioners. Mr. Davis has already asked me, so if you'll stay right there, we will try to pin you to the floor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your testimony. The chairman asked one of my questions. Obviously, is this being done for the Taylor family, or are they planning on selling the property to a solar company? Apparently, you've answered that question. But I noticed in the report they require every 5 years that you test the soils. I'm more concerned about, do you know how long you're going to have those panels there? Just most ones I've heard of is going to be for 25 years. So I don't know what your situation is. It's going to be 25 years or whatever. But the question I really have, no matter the number of years, when you're done, what are you planning on doing about the soil? Because if you let ground or soil be dormant for 25, 30 years, you lose a lot of those nutrients in that ground. And if you're going to get out of the business, then I want to know what you're going to do to put that ground back like it should be from day one. And I think that's a fair question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Davis, if I may, I'd like to call Mr. Taylor to the lectern. I think he would be better suited to answer that question.
You'll have to give his name and address and be sworn or affirmed, please.
I consider this as a type of diversified income to help support the farm. The rental, per acre rental is way above what I can do farming. And basically I support that farm working at a company up here in Dover, Procter & Gamble. That's how I support that farm right now and keep it in the farmland and then not turn it into houses like most of the farmers in the state have done. So when it comes to the soil, and when that is done, those solar panels will be pulled up and turned back into agriculture if that's what my son decides to do with a farm. And then we will work it from there.
Okay, that sounds good, because you obviously have a family situation that you're in the farming industry and you want to stay there for a while. So thank you very much for your answer.
Any other commissioners have any questions?
Clients, our generation, are working with Delmarva Power on an interconnect agreement, and so they're working with Delmarva Power on the details of the subscriber agreements and the marketing and that sort of thing. And again, they're on the line. They may be able to answer that question in a little more detail.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Do you intend to plant a cover crop in there, or flowers or shrubs or anything in there that you're going to mow, that you're going to keep it nice and neat, or what?
So around the arrays, there will be maintenance that will occur, land maintenance that will occur. But as I said in my presentation, that we are talking about planting. The areas that are not within, there will be grass, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.